Breaking tonight, a 79-year-old president just threatened to ban Canada's national sport. This isn't satire. This is Washington's new reality. The question was simple. Mr. President, what do you think about the UK getting into business with China? Trump's answer, a rambling warning that China would ban Canadian hockey. Let that sink in. A reporter asked about Britain. Trump answered with threats about Canada's national pastime. But Trump's bizarre outburst isn't just about cognitive decline. It's about power shifting in real time. American leverage over Canada? Gone. One meeting in Beijing just rewrote the entire North American relationship. Washington is panicking because they finally understand what happened. Mark Carney flew to Beijing, sat down with President Xi Jinping. They announced a new strategic partnership aimed at reversing years of frozen Canada-China relations. Washington never saw it coming, and that's exactly why Trump spiraled into incoherent hockey warnings. The implications were immediate. Canada's second largest trading partner after the United States just became a genuine alternative to American dependency. The economic diversification strategy that started as defensive positioning suddenly became offensive capability. And Trump's response, standing at the premiere of a documentary about his wife Melania, asked about British trade policy, the 79-year-old president veered into what can only be described as deranged hockey warnings. Canada's not doing well. They are doing very poorly, and you can't look at China as the answer to this. Trump rambled. I know China very well. President Xi is a friend of mine. I know him very well. The first thing they're going to do is say you are not allowed to play ice hockey anymore. That's not good. Canada's not going to like that. Translation: Washington just realized it no longer controls Canada's economic future, and panic is setting in. Dear viewers, let's examine what actually transpired in Beijing while Trump was fantasizing about hockey bans. Mark Carney didn't go to China begging for favors. He went with leverage. Canada announced it would allow approximately 50,000 Chinese electric vehicles at a 6.1% tariff rate, down from the blanket 100% tariff imposed in late 2024, a measure Ottawa had imposed merely to mirror American policy, not because of Canadian strategic interests. Think about that timeline. Canada copied American tariff policy, realized it served Washington's agenda, not Ottawa's, and reversed course within months. In return for this tariff adjustment, Beijing agreed to scale back retaliatory tariffs on Canadian canola seeds and meal. Canadian farmers, who'd been collateral damage in America's trade wars for years, suddenly got relief. Not from Washington, from Beijing. This wasn't capitulation. This was strategic bargaining between sovereign nations pursuing mutual interests. The kind of relationship mature economies maintain. The kind of autonomy Canada has been building systematically since Carney took office. And Trump's reaction revealed everything about Washington's crumbling position. When you can't compete on strategy, you resort to bizarre threats about banning sports. Between Trump's first term and now, something fundamental shifted in Canadian strategic thinking. During Trump's previous presidency, Canadian officials scrambled. When Washington imposed tariffs, Ottawa responded defensively. When Trump demanded USMCA renegotiation, Canada complied anxiously. The relationship was reactive, desperate, constrained. But Carney's government learned the essential lesson: American volatility isn't a bug, it's a feature. And features don't change. So instead of hoping for stability from Washington, Canada built alternatives. The China partnership isn't happening in isolation. It's part of a comprehensive diversification strategy. India, Australia, European Union, CPTPP nations. Every relationship strengthened. Every partnership deepened. Every alternative road established. Trump keeps threatening 100% tariffs if Canada gets too close to China. Carney's response: cool, calm, professional. We're not pursuing a free trade deal with Beijing, he said. No drama, no panic. But here's what Carney didn't say out loud. Canada will decide who we trade with, not Washington. Not anymore. No panic. No capitulation. Just clarity. This is what national maturity looks like. This is what strategic independence produces. Now let's address what everyone watching Trump's press appearances is noticing. The president is not well. Stephanie Grisham, Trump's former White House press secretary for 9 months during his first term, watched the January 20th press conference and wrote bluntly on X, "It's all the usual rambling, off-topic tales, half-truths, lies. I've fixed everything. No one has ever seen anything like its stuff, but it's low energy and feels like he's mentally slipping. Congress BLZ, wake up. The hockey warnings fit this pattern perfectly." Asked about Britain and China, Trump spiraled into Canadian sports policy. It's the same cognitive pattern visible across dozens of recent appearances: tangential thinking, bizarre fixations, inability to maintain focus. And here's what makes this particularly dangerous for American credibility. Trump's obsessions reveal his frustrations. He's fixated on Canada because Canada is escaping American economic control. He's fixated on hockey because it represents something he can't leverage: cultural identity, national pride, sovereign tradition. He's fixated on China because Beijing offers Canada exactly what Washington can't: predictable, professional, interest-based partnership. One observer noted the absurdity perfectly. If the US were to invade Canada, one of the first things they'd ban is hockey. Too deep an expression of Canadian identity gets groups of people together, sharing emotions. Think about what that reveals. Hockey isn't just a sport in Canada, it's community, it's shared identity, it's collective experience that transcends political division. It's exactly the kind of unifying cultural force that authoritarian impulses fear. And Trump, whether consciously or through cognitive fog, identified it as a target. The upcoming Olympics have added another dimension to Trump's hockey obsession. Social media commentary captured it perfectly. He's going to be so insufferable if US beats Canada in the Olympics. I have to imagine the Canadian team would be pulling out all the stops in that game for national pride. Not that Olympians aren't already doing that, but you get what I mean. This isn't just about athletic competition anymore. It's about national identity in an era of American imperial overreach. Every Canadian player will step on that ice knowing what's at stake. Every shift will carry sovereignty. Every goal will mean resistance. This isn't about hating Americans. We don't, but we won't be absorbed. We won't be controlled. We won't disappear into someone else's empire. Trump's hockey obsession just turned an Olympic game into a national statement. Canadian athletes know exactly what message to deliver. Critics have noted the transparent playbook behind Trump's bizarre statements. The comment about banning hockey has to be the dumbest of the lot, and it has a lot of competition. He's just following his usual script for attacking Democrats. And that's the key insight. Trump isn't making coherent policy arguments. He's following emotional patterns: identify target, make absurd claim, hope repetition creates reality. It works domestically because American media amplifies whatever Trump says. But it fails internationally because sovereign nations don't operate on American news cycles. Carney isn't responding to Trump's hockey threats because they're not serious policy. They're noise, static, the desperate flailing of declining influence trying to maintain psychological dominance. Canada's response is strategic silence on the absurdities, coupled with concrete action on actual interests. Meet with China. Reduce tariffs strategically. Secure Canadian farmers access to markets. Build alternative partnerships. Let Trump rant about hockey. Canada will focus on sovereignty. Trump's escalating rhetoric about imposing 100% tariffs on Canadian imports reveals something critical: he's running out of actual leverage. During his first term, tariff threats worked because Canada hadn't built alternatives. Us MC, our renegotiation succeeded because Canada needed American market access desperately. But in 2026, China is Canada's second largest trading partner. India is accelerating partnership discussions. European markets are accessible through CETA. CPTPP provides Pacific alternatives. When Trump threatens 100% tariffs now, the calculation has changed. Yes, it would hurt Canadian exports, but it would devastate American consumers, spike inflation, fracture North American supply chains, and accelerate Canadian diversification. Trump is threatening to shoot himself in the foot while Canada wears steel-toed boots, and he knows it. Which is why the threats keep escalating while the actual policy remains unchanged. It's the geopolitical equivalent of shouting louder when you're losing the argument. Last week, Trump posted on Truth Social: China is successfully and completely taking over the once great country of Canada. So sad to see it happen. I only hope they leave ice hockey alone. President DJT. Let's translate this properly. Taking over means Canada is making sovereign trade decisions without American approval. Once great country means Canada used to be reliably subservient and now isn't. So sad means I'm frustrated by my inability to control Canadian policy. I hope they leave ice hockey alone means I have no actual policy response, so I'm making culturally inflammatory statements. This is what American imperial decline sounds like in real time, not strategic repositioning, not graceful adaptation to multipolarity, just incoherent resentment that other nations dare to pursue their own interests. While Trump spirals through cognitive fog and policy incoherence, Mark Carney's government maintains strategic clarity. Asked about pursuing a free trade deal with China, Carney stated clearly Canada does not intend to pursue that path, but Canada will maintain productive trade relationships based on mutual interest. No drama, no Twitter rants, no hockey threats. Just professional governance from a country that's learned the essential lesson American chaos is permanent, so Canadian stability must be self-generated. The China partnership isn't about replacing American trade relationships. It's about ensuring no single partner can weaponize economic dependency. It's about creating options. It's about sovereignty. And every time Trump issues another deranged threat, he proves exactly why Canada needed this strategy. Dear viewers, step back and see the full picture. A 79-year-old American president showing visible signs of cognitive decline responds to Canadian strategic autonomy with threats to ban hockey. A Canadian prime minister conducts professional diplomacy in Beijing, secures concrete benefits for Canadian industries, and maintains measured responses to American volatility. The contrast isn't just stylistic, it's structural. It's the difference between a country building its future and a country clinging to its past. Canada isn't being taken over by China. Canada is building diverse partnerships with multiple nations because relying exclusively on an increasingly unstable southern neighbor is strategic malpractice. This is what national maturity looks like. This is what strategic independence produces. This is what sovereignty demands. The hockey warnings aren't really about hockey, they're about control. Trump sees Canadian autonomy and processes it as betrayal. He sees strategic diversification and interprets it as abandonment. He sees sovereign decision-making and experiences it as personal rejection. But Canada's responsibility isn't managing American presidential psychology. Canada's responsibility is securing Canadian prosperity, protecting Canadian interests, and maintaining Canadian dignity in an increasingly multipolar world. Mark Carney's China visit accomplished all three, and Trump's incoherent response proved exactly why it was necessary. The era of Canadian dependence on American stability is over. Not because Canadians want conflict with America, we don't, but because American stability no longer exists. So Canada builds alternatives. Canada creates options. Canada maintains sovereignty, and if that makes a declining president rant about hockey, that's confirmation of strategic success, not cause for concern. The game has changed. Canada is playing it professionally, and no amount of bizarre threats will alter the fundamental reality sovereign nations don't need permission to pursue their interests. Translation: Canada just told Washington that our future is ours to determine, and what happens next will prove exactly why strategic independence, built patiently and purposefully, reshapes continental power dynamics while imperial nostalgia collapses into incoherent resentment. This is Canada next. Sovereignty in action, building the future one strategic partnership at a time while Washington tweets about hockey.